Bava Kamma, page 66, 12 lines from the top of the page. Two important definitions we need to remember before we start. One, it's called change, or in Ivrit, shinui. The second one is yeush, meaning despair. Here we talk about the law of stolen or lost property. Reuven, for example, lost a valuable item, let's say a Rolex watch, expensive watch, and the issue is certain amount of time he gave up hope. How you treat it? Another option is Shimon stole a valuable from Reuven and used it. What exactly happened with that item later on if the value of that item change? We talked yesterday about animal. You have an animal that have a certain value, for example, $1,000. Now the animal is fattened, is worth $1,500, or the animal is skinny, it's worth $700. So the whole change of the value has an application when the thief returned the item to its owner. The big question is, if Reuven, for example, stole an item from Shimon, what exactly the status of that stolen item? If that just one time iniquity, but then he is basically the owner of that item or not? Simple thing, before Sukkot we have the mitzvah of the Arbaat Aminim, the four species. Reuven stole that from Shimon. So, or for example, Reuven stole a flour and make it a bread. He changed the status from flour to bread. How exactly you treat it? Or Reuven stole matzah for Passover. So now he ate it, he swallowed it. Did he fulfill the mitzvah of matzah or not? In general, the rabbi said that when you have guests before Pesach, since it's a inyan, it's important lechatchila, the way it should be, to have their own matzah, you should make a kinyan, you should make an acquisition to your children, to your guests, so they have their own, in a way, matzah. But in general, the definition of yeush, the definition of despair, is a long subject among the great rabbis. Like, it's a book called Ktsot HaChoshen, it's a book Netivot HaMishpat. What exactly the definition of yeush, of despair? Obviously, Rabbeinu Nachman of Breslov said there is no such a thing, despair is no yeush in our world. So as we said, with 12 lines from top of page 66, Amar Rabba Shinui Koneh. So it means the change of the stolen article. Reuven stole car from Shimon. In a way, that car is now belongs to Reuven with all the consequences. Accident, damage, profit, anything. He is the owner of that car in that sense, since he has a matter of transactions, meaning ktiva vetanina. We have for that both a line in the Torah and also in a Mishnah. The Torah Chaim explains, the Gemara tells us in Tractate Kiddushin, ki Yehuda ve'od likra. Meaning, if you have something is written in the Torah, you don't need a support from the oral text, which is the Mishnah. But he explains that this text will be clearer by the text of the oral teaching of the Mishnah. And he said, Ktiva, the Torah said in Leviticus chapter 5, verse 23, Veheshiv et hagzeila asher gazal. Meaning, there is an obligation upon Shimon to return, for example, if he stole something from Reuven, to return the item. Ma Talmud lomar asher gazal. Why the Torah is at length with words? we understand if you just said Ve'eshiv et hagzela, return the lost item, meaning that Mr. Shimon has the obligation to return what he stole from Reuven. The idea of addition two words in the Torah, asher gazal, obviously he needs to return, im ke'en gazal, meaning Shimon has the obligation to return the item in the same conditions that it was when he took it from the Reuven, meaning the same value, the same conditions. Yachazir, ve'im lav, if something happened in between, dabim be'alma ba'ei shalumei, he needs to pay the cash value, the current value of the stolen item. Meaning, as far as the transactions between parties, which call ma'aseh kinyan, that stolen item became the ownership of the thief. For our case, for example, Shimon, who stole something from Reuven, he is the owner of that item, and therefore he has the obligation to return. Now, if something happened and it doesn't have the same status, you have to evaluate, appraise what exactly the value that the item was stolen worth, and he needs to pay the compensation, the monetary compensation that match the value of that item. So the question is, what exactly are you talking about? Returning the item is a different values. Return just cash, tanina. We learn in the Mishnah, this is something we're going to learn in page 93b, hagozel etzim ve'asa'am kelim. If someone steals wood and makes it into utensils, so obviously you can take wood and make a table, make it other things. Tzemer, you take a wool, ve'asa'an bgadin, and you make it as a garment. What do you have to do now? Meshalem kishat hagzeila. You have to evaluate how much it was worth at the time that it was stolen, meaning he can keep the clothing, he can keep the utensils, the thief, but he needs to pay the monetary value of that item at the time that it was stolen. So Tosfot explained to us that there are several status of change here. For example, take a lulav. You know, one of the arba'at aminim, one of the four species, is the lulav, right? Dry lulav is not kosher. But if it was a kosher lulav, but doesn't look nice, look like a little yellow, someone take a painting and paint it green, right? So if the lulav by itself is kasher, meaning it's basic, in a hindsight is okay to use, so it's not mehudar, it's not the best, but the moment you painted, it looks like real one, right? So the question is that okay? It's like someone asked, is a famous response, someone asked a rabbi, you know that in Pesach, lechatchila, the way it should be, we're using a red wine for Pesach. There are some people who like, for all kind of reasons, white wine. So what do you do with someone who wants, in one hand, to follow the idea of yayin kiyit adam, which means he wants to use mina muvchar, a red wine, but he likes white wine. So he combined it. So what's proper to do is before Yom Tov, before Pesach, to do this shtick, this combination of colors. Because there are some rabbis who pointed out that is isur tzvi'ah, the issue of kind of painting on the holidays. There's a story about Rashab of Lubavitch, the great Lubavitcher Rebbe, the one before the one, meaning the old one. They said that it was one of the followers, one of the Hasidim, who was a, how do you call it, painted person, which means everything was not real, everything was painted. All his appearance was painted. And he was very mekarev, he did a big outreach to that person. So the Rayatz, the former Rebbe, asked the Rashab, why are you doing that? So he explained and he said, look, as long as this fellow wants to be part of us, it's better to take him the way that he was painted, rather than if we rejected him, he'll go to places that he's really belongs to. But anyway, here we said that the idea of painting is make it in a way that it appear real. In Namei, another option, we learn in Gemarrah in Chulin, page 135, Lo ispik litno lo ad shetzva'o, if someone bring the first gaz of the animals, he bring it to the Kohen, and he didn't have enough time until the wool did not change, did not manage to give the first of the shearing to the Kohen before he dyed it, Patur, he's exempt from giving it. Alma shinui koneh, you derive from that the change effect acquisition under the Torah law. So the Rashi explained that the Kohen always can give it to another Kohen. So based on that, you can ask the foundation, the big question, which Rashi said here, and I'm just reading the text, the way the Rashi presented. Shinui koneh, heicha deshane lehu beyadayim pshita leide midoraita vadai koneh. If he's physically changed the status, so ganav beyadayim, stolen article in his hand, he made change in that item. That's the idea of veheshiv et hagzeila. He can pay a compensation without the item itself. Yeush, when it's come to a despair, Amrei Rabbanan den Niknei, the sages said that it's acquired. That's something we're going to study, the Rashba said in the next page, 67b. Mi'u lo yad'inan, but we are not sure if this is biblical or rabbinic, either oraita, either Rabbanan. So the Rabbah elaborates on that. Either oraita, that you tell me that the effect of acquisition, it's under the Torah law, we can juxtapose, we can compare it to one who found a lost article. If someone found a lost article, if the owner gave up hope before the one who found it, meaning the owner gave up hope over his expensive watch, before the founder, the person who find it, acquired to himself. So this is a well-known Gemara in Tractate Bava Meci'ah, page 22b, that the founder is basically acquired that item to himself. So we derive from the word mimenu, that the moment the founder lift up the lost article, it's basically his. As we said, the Ktsot HaChoshen, Nativot HaMishpat, elaborates a lot the definition of despair, the Yeush. What does that mean? Because in general, we believe in Judaism that is en Yeush, is no despair. So in a way, they put a fine for those people who give up hope. Hainame kevandem ya'ash mara, because the person gave up hope from that item that was stolen. Kanele, the thief, acquired to himself. Alma kanei. So therefore the biblical texts assure the thief a matter of acquisition. Or dilma, or you go the other way around and you said, Lo damya la'aveda. You cannot compare it to a matter of lost. So the idea is that Gazlan, a thief, lo koneh al yedei Yeush, is not acquired by matter of despair of the owner. Only al yedei shinui reshut, that he changed the domain of that item. So for example, Reuven stole something and he gave it to Shimon. So Rabbeinu Asher, the Rosh, said, lahalacha. So if it was Yeush, if the owner gave up hope, and he went ahead and he betrothed the woman with that stolen item, mekudeshet, she is basically betrothed to him. So the Ktsot HaChoshen explained, and he said, she is betrothed not because the idea of Yeush Koneh, that despair make a matter of acquisition, but only because it's Shinui Reshut, it changed the domain of the ownership. So it means that she is betrothed even if you said Yeush Lo Koneh. So here, the idea is that Reuven took something, he gave it to Shimon. Shimon is not supposed to lose because Reuven did something wrong. So therefore we said Reshut Kona. But when he went ahead and betrothed a woman with that item, which is a stolen item, even changing the domain of the ownership, so by force of circumstance, in a hindsight, it's matter of betrothed, because we said Yeush Koneh. Rashi said here, דתניא באלו מציאות, מניין לעבדה ששטפן ההר עולים דיאשו הבעלים שהיא מותרת, תלמוד לומר אשר תאבד ממנו. So the בני יששכר bring from the חידה, מרן החידה. יעקב אבינו took the world to come. Esau took this world. So how come we have also this world? So he explains, אם בחוקותיי תלכו, the Torah said, if you follow my path, so you have also Gashmiyut, you have also materialistic world. So he the Chida bring from Maharash Rimo up to the time of Matan Torah. So you have the Olam Hazeh, this world belong to Esav, and Olam Haba, world to come, belong to Yaakov. But since Kiyuma Olam Talui Batorah, the survival of the world depend upon fulfilling the Torah, so Klal Israel, the whole nation, considering as saving the world from Tohu Vavohu, from total chaos. So therefore, it turns that Yaakov have also Olam Hazeh, from the same idea of Matzil Mizuto Shel Yam. So without Yaakov, there is no survival of the world. But back to our Gemara, we said, Avidahu dechiatai lidei behetera atya lidei. אבל היי כיוון דבאיסוע אתל ידי, since he gathered in a way of violation, meaning since the stolen article came into his possession illegally before the owner despair, so therefore miderabananhu, it's only rabbinic decree that the owner's subsequent despair affect acquisition. The Amura Banan Niknei, the rabbi said that the thief acquired it mipnei takanat hashavim, because we want to make an enchantment to those who wish to return, to do tshuva, to return to God. So therefore, we don't want them to impose too much on them, to return the original stolen article, which may avoid them from doing teshuvah. So that's the way that by force of circumstance the rabbis allow it. ורב יוסף אמר ייאוש אינו קונה ואפילו מדרבנן. Rav Yosef disputed and he said no, the despair does not affect acquisition of a stolen article for the thief altogether, even under rabbinic law. So meaning, Rashi said that the thief needs to return the original article that was stolen. That's Rav Yosef's view. So Rav Yosef challenged Rabba's view, and he said, Eitivei Rav Yosef le Rabba. This is something we're going to study in chapter 9, page 96b. Gazal chametz, if one stolen a leavened bread, which is prohibited on Pesach. But meanwhile, ve'avar alav Pesach, and the Pesach festival passed over it. Meaning, as the Mishnah tells us in Tractate Psachim, page 28, that is prohibited to drive any benefit, since it was in his domain during the festival of Pesach. 66b, Omer lo, the thief can say to the owner, Harei shelcha lefanecha. Here you have the stolen article before you. You have it back. The damage that was to that chametz, it's not nikar la'ayin, it's not appear in the eye of a person, so he can basically exempt by just, Rashi said, by just return the item. Kevan demata idan isura, because it's come the time that is prohibited, which is the eve of Passover. Vadai miya'ash, the hoarder certainly despairs over recovering it. Ve'is al kadatach, and if you tell me ushkana, the despair certainly make it as a matter of effect acquisition. Amay omer lo hare shelcha lefanecha. Why he said, here is the yours before you. Dmei me'alya ba'ele shalum elei. He needs to pay the owner what the chametz was worth at the time of theft. So the Or Sameach have a discussion over this. When exactly is the Zman Yeush, the time of the despair? Is that the time of the Isur Chametz? So that's not really relevant. You have to say that it's several hours before that, before the Zman Isur. So, Reuven zacha ki Shimon ityaesh. Reuven acquired it because Shimon is in a state of despair over that. But anyway, Amar lei ki ka mina ana. What they said that Yeush koneh, that despair, make it an acquisition, ze mityaesh. The owner is despair, he gave up hope. Veze, and the thief, rotze liknot. He wanted to, the thief wishes to acquire it. Hai ze mityaesh, ve'ze eino rotze liknot. But here in this case, the owner despairs, and the thief does not wish to acquire it. So, the Ktsoda Choshen said that by saying that someone is despair, that's not make it an acquisition to someone else. Because again, the core is the idea that when it's come to despair is biblical or rabbinic. Because if you tell me it's rabbinic, he can say, EFC betakanat chachamim. He gave up, mitcharet. So they have to say that the oraita, you go by the biblical term, despair, koneh. So the Nodab Yehuda, you see it also, Reb Cheskel Avramsky, Nodab Yehuda said it in Siman Kaf. He said, the Chidush, when Reuven stole an item from Shimon. So if it's a chametz, so let's say after Pesach, Reuven returned the chametz to Shimon. Now think about it. Reuven said to Shimon, Harei shelcha lefanecha, here is the chametz before you. What do you learn here in our sugya? That chametz asur. Why? It's prohibited. It's chametz she'avar alav Pesach. It's the chametz that passed to the festival of Pesach. So here is a big chidush of the Nodab Yehuda. The Nodab Yehuda said that the isur, the prohibition, is specifically to a person who did avla, who did something wrong. For example, someone who carried chametz during the Pesach. But here Shimon, Reuven stole it from him, so Shimon allowed to use that chametz. Why? Because he didn't do avla, he didn't do something wrong. So they ask, how about hezek she'eino nikar? So it means that it's appear that it's prohibited to Shimon. So this is the big chidush of Nodab Yehuda, that he said that the Rabbanan, the sages, did not prohibited on Shimon because he did not do any wrong. He did not carry the chametz during the Pesach. Anyway, Eiti ve'abayei leRava. The Torah said in Leviticus, Vayikra chapter 1, verse 3, Korbano, if olah, meaning a burnt offering, it's his offering. So it means that the olah is kasher, is befitting, only if the owner bring his own offering. Velo hagazul, and not offering that was stolen from someone. Hey cheidame, give me an example that something that was stolen. Ileima lifnei yeush, if you tell me that this is prior to the owner's despair. Lama likra, why you need a special pasuk that said that this offering is invalid? Pshita, it's obvious. A person cannot sanctify an animal that he is not owning it. That's what the Gemarrah said. We're going to study it in page 68b. So if the thief sanctified that animal before the owner of that stolen animal gave up hope, is a despair, that sanctification of that animal is ineffective. So therefore, Tosfot said, obviously you cannot bring this animal as a sacrificial burnt offering. Ilema lifnei yeush, lama likra pshita. Elalav, you have to say le'achar yeush. You have to say that happened after the person is despair, he gave up hope. And even though that happened, the Torah teaches that this offering is invalid. Why? Because it's not korbano. Because the person who brings that offering is not the owner of that offering. Shma mina, so you derive from that, yeush lo kanei, the owner's despair does not affect acquisition. So according to Rashi, when it's come to korban, to offering, lo shayach inyan shel yeush, it's not relevant, the idea of despair. Adam ki yakriv mikem korban. The Torah said clearly in Leviticus that a person bring an offering. So we learn from that, Rashi said, without chashash gezel, that it has to be like the first man, like Adam HaRishon, that he brought to Hashem, the Almighty, offering that doesn't take from anyone else. So the Ktav Sofer asks a question, what do you mean that it doesn't take from anyone else? You have a wife, you have children, right? You have Eve, you have children. So he explained, many times people have kochi v'otzim, people have this feeling, oh, this is my money, this is my offering, I own it, I am the one. But Adam basically knew, the first man, that he have nothing, that is all the thing that he have is only by Hashem. Anyway, Amar le Rava, uletamich, that it means that if a person take be'emat chulin, an unconsecrated animal, and sanctify it, ha-detanya. Here we learn the text in Leviticus chapter 15, verse 5. We talk about zav, a person that have semen, they have discharge. So the Torah said, whoever touch mishkavo, so he is contaminated until the evening, which means only the mishkav zav, the place that the zav dwell, applies only if he is the one, is the owner of that place. Velo hagazul, and not a mattress, for example, that not belong to him. Hey cheidame, ileimag de gazal amra ve'avdei mishkav, if you take a wool and make it like a mattress. So they said, Mi'ika leman de'amar shinui ma'aseh lo kaneh, laman de'itlach lemimar de gazal mishkav de chavrei, hachaname de gazal korban de chavrei. So here the same thing, that he take the stole, where he stole his fellow consecrated offering, so the brighter did not present any difficulty on Rabbah. Eiti ve'abai le Rav Yosef, that's Mishnah in Tractate Kelim, page 20, chapter 26, Mishnah 8, Orot shel Baal HaBayit, if you have a hides of a householder, machashava metam'atam, so if the owner think to use them the way they are, so they befitting to receive, susceptible of ritual impurity, v'shel abdan, but if it's the hides is to a tanner, ein machshava metam'atam. So they because he may sell them, and the buyer use them for something that needs tikkun melacha. Shel ganav machshava metam'atan, shel gazlan machshava metam'tan. Rabbi Shimon אומר חילוב הדברים. או של גזלן מחשבה מטמטם, של גנב אין מחשבה מטמאתן. לפי שלא תיאשו הבעלים, because the owner did not despair of recovering them. ושמע מינה, ייאוש קנה. So you derive from this that despair alone affect acquisition. So Rav Yosef respond, אמר לי, הכה במה עסקינן. Here we're talking about what? כגון שקיצען, when the thief or the robber trim the hides. So therefore you don't have this matter of שינוי מעשה. מתקיף לרבא בר רב חנן, ולא יצבע שנו. כאן the Mishnah teaching here about a tray, ויצבע אין צריכה קיצוע, and the tray that not require trimming. So ditnan, that we learn in Mishnah in Tractate Kelim, chapter 26. כל מקום שאין חסרון מלאכה, מחשבה מטמאתו. Where is the further processing is not lacking? thought renders susceptible to ritual impurity. יש חסרון מלאכה, אין מחשבה מטמאתו, חוץ מן האצבע, excluding for the tray. So what do you see? That the Mishnah hold that the thief thought render hide susceptible to ritual impurity, pertaining even where the thief did not trim the hide. So you see here that the thief's acquisition is affected by despair alone, which basically contradicts what Rav Yosef said. אלא אמר רבא, המילתא קשיא ברבה לרב יוסף 20 ותרתין שנין. This question bothered Rav Yosef 22 years. We know the Gemarrah in הוראיות, Rav Yosef, Rabbah, Sinai, או כערים. Anyway, ולא היא פרקה, he didn't resolve it. עד יתיב רב יוסף ברישה ופרקה, until after Rabbah passed away and Rav Yosef was the Rosh Yeshiva, and he explained, שינוי השם, a change of a name, is the same כשינוי מעשה דמי, is the same as a physical change. Meaning, the same way as the physical change in a stolen article affects the acquisition by the thief, so to a change in a stolen article's name affect acquisition by a thief. שינוי מעשה מהי תמה? התם מעיקר העצים, השתא כלים, שינוי השם נמה מעיקר הקר אולי משקה, originally they call it hide, והשתא אברזין, now they call it tray, that's itzvah. So it means ייאוש לא קונה, שינוי השם קונה לכולי עלמא. So the Kotzker Rebbe asked a question. If tameh nogea b'tahor, if someone impure touch a pure, so it became impure, right? Why is not the other way around? If tahor touch tameh, make it tahor. So he said you have to differentiate between yedi'ah brura, clear knowledge or not. Ritual impurity, it's clear. Tahor, it's a question if it's clear or not. The Reb Chaim Brisk said, why the wicked people sometimes won? So he explained, they said publicly, we don't believe in anything, we are heretic, etc., etc. So in their view, that's the absolute truth. If we stay in total emunah, in total truth, in 100%, we will be able to win always. That's the idea of Geulah. They said that we go, in time of the Mashiach time, the end of the days, we'll go by the total truth, and then we'll be able to conquer everything. So what you see in the wrap-up, in conclusion, you see here that you have a machloket, you have a disputation between Rabbi and Rav Yosef. If Shimon stole something from Reuven, and Reuven hityaesh, Reuven is in a state of despair, so Shimon koneh, Shimon acquired, and that's the safek. If the Rabbah have a safek, if this is rabbinic or biblical, Rav Yosef said, even Reuven hityaesh, even Reuven gave up hope and is a total despair, Shimon still lo kana, Shimon still not acquired it.